With the rise of AI, is it still really necessary for us to still learn how to code? Well, now that we have vibe coding, is it still worth it? Well, in this video, I'll be actually talking to you guys about both traditional software engineering as well as the new coin term vibe coding. If you're new to this channel, I go by the name of Koketso Fresh, and welcome to Billionaire Developers. One. Okay, so welcome everybody to today's presentation. And guys, if you're new to this channel, please make sure that you like, comment, and you do subscribe. If you're interested about all things tech, AI, and gaming, this is the channel for you. But let's jump straight right into it. So today we're going to be talking about software engineering versus vibe coding, right? So let's look at the old versus the new and what really makes a developer nowadays. So in today's topic and conversations, we're going to be obviously covering the introductions. Then we're jumping into what exactly is traditional software engineering, what is vibe coding, and also the key differences between the two. We'll be also jumping into the pros and the cons of both, and then we'll be looking at when exactly is it okay for you to actually use vibe coding, and why is it still software engineering still matter today. Then we'll be looking at future developments in terms of integrating AI on both spheres, and then we'll be doing the closing. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So guys, if you're new to the channel, you're probably asking yourself, what the hell is Billionaire Developers? Well, Billionaire Developers is a global tech and AI community focusing purely on teaching people about AI, tech, gaming, and everything in between. So if you are a beginner, you're just starting out, or you might be an expert, this is the channel for you. So please make sure that you hit that subscribe button, like, and don't just leave a comment. Drop a question and let's continue the conversation. Right, without further ado, you're probably asking, who is this guy, right? I go by the name of Koketso Fresh. I am the founder of Billionaire Developers on this channel, and I am the senior tech lead as well as the tech content creator. Some of my accolades is I am a 4-time AI certified software engineer, and I'm also an international speaker and mentor, and I've worked in affiliation partnerships with Google, Microsoft, IBM, and AWS. But this is not about me, guys. So let's jump right into it. So let's talk about what exactly is software engineering, right? We're looking at the traditional software. So basically, in a nutshell, software engineering is the discipline. All right, guys, so let's jump straight right into it. So the big question is, what is software engineering? Looking at traditional software, right? So in a nutshell, software engineering is the disciplined process of designing, building, testing, and maintaining reliable software systems, right? So think of any software system that you've actually interacted with, and these people actually deal with code, right? So they'll have to learn Python, they'll have to learn Java, they'll have to learn C++. That is what traditional software engineering is. But it doesn't really stop there because, as you progress as a software engineer, there's going to be many other responsibilities that you have to do, right? So the things like documentation, there's things like making sure that you're abiding by code standards. Is your code cleaned? So it gets much deeper than that. But I think let's just look more into what exactly do these software engineers do. So essentially, software engineers work with code from scratch. So as I mentioned, it's like Python, Java, and C++. They are able to build applications or websites or software or anything in between. They also have to maintain, monitor, refactor code over the health of the entire system, right? So when I mean the health in terms of making sure that the end to end of the whole software actually works properly. And they have to be able to push code to production. So usually what happens is maybe there is a development environment where multiple developers work on certain features, and then they all put it all together, and then from there they'll put it probably on a staging or straight to production. And then other than that, they have to be able to run tests and also debug errors. So what that means is that you need to create test cases to test if your software is actually working correctly. Debugging errors where if you are running into an issue, software engineers need to be able to understand what the error is, or be able to research and find out how to actually make sure that they can be able to solve this error. So let's look at some of the characteristics of being a software engineer. So first and foremost, you need to be a problem solver, because every single time you are working on a new feature or a new software or a new client, you are solving someone's problem. You are solving a problem. So you're dealing with solving problems all the time. Then you need to know about system design, right? So especially if you are starting a software or a big project, it's always essential for you to actually really think about how are you going to really structure and actually plan out your development process. And that's usually where we actually integrate system design. Scalability, right? So in terms of, if the system now starts growing, if we have more users, if we have more functionality, if we have more processes, how is now the software now be able to actually expand without us starting from scratch, or taking out certain key features? So we need to start building software that we able to handle large loads, big databases, high number of requests if we're working with clients. Also thinking about working with APIs as well. Reliability, so meaning our system does not crash, right? So every time maybe we're trying to make a request and then all of a sudden we have a crashing system, whether it be the payload is not loading well, or maybe there is a request error and so forth. So, and also making sure that the security measures are in place, making sure that there are no hackers that are in between. If we're working with databases, we need to make sure that there's no redundant data, meaning the data is not copied or being found in wrong places. And then long-term thinking, right? We need to have a future in terms of, if I'm building this website today, in the next year or two, how will I be able to change things or even add things or integrate things into this platform, right? So now that we understand what software engineering is as a whole, let's now look at vibe coding, which is the new age software development. Now, what exactly is vibe coding? Vibe coding is a modern approach to building software by just experimenting, following tutorials, and using AI assisted tools to quickly create working solutions, right? So I'm sure you guys have heard of this term prompt engineering, but if you haven't, basically what it means is that nowadays, because of AI now comes with the ability to actually assist you or help you to actually build websites or applications and software by just simply speaking to it in a natural language. So this is what we call prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is just simply the method of you type what you're actually describing, what your website is, in typing about what you want to actually achieve, what you want the website to do. If you want to integrate payments, if you want to also bring in links or whatnot. Basically, you are now communicating with this platform instead of actually writing traditional code. So this is called like the new age software engineering, which is now called vibe coding. So now let's look at what it takes for you to be a vibe coder, right? So it's rapid experimentation, heavy use of tutorials and examples, AI assistant tools focused on getting things working quickly and learning through doing, right? So as you can see, now that vibe coding is in the picture, you don't necessarily have to go all the way in terms of learning coding from the basics. So what you can now do is, I would highly recommend that you can actually go into vibe coding and learn how to code simultaneously, right? Because nowadays, you can actually learn and actually see at the same time. So, for instance, if you're trying to learn web development, right? Web development is quite good because while you're busy typing and saying, hey, I want a landing page about a portfolio, you can actually learn side by side to say, oh, okay, and analyze the code and see what exactly is happening, while on the same time you are studying and taking notes and actually learning the language. So let's look at some popular vibe coding tools, right? So first and foremost, Lovable. Lovable is quite a good platform where if you want to start experimenting in terms of building websites and bringing out prototypes, things like a website, a dashboard, anything in between. Then we have Gemini. Gemini, basically, it is a Google AI tool. Basically, what you can do is, as I mentioned, you actually type in certain prompts, and what it will do is it will generate the code for you. ChatGPT is also another popular one. Same thing as Gemini. It uses a lot of prompt engineering in that, where you just simply type and request exactly what you want. Microsoft's Copilot as well is another popular tool where you can also just type in your prompt and everything is actually generated and given to you. Now we have Bolt.new. This is similar to Lovable, where it is yet again a browser AI tool where you can just simply type in your prompt and you can actually see your work being developed right there and then. All right. So now we have a good understanding in terms of traditional software and now vibe coding, right? But what are the key differences? Because they ultimately do the same things, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we are trying to build products, we're trying to build software, we're trying to build websites. But what are now the key elements and the key differences between the two? Now, if we first focus on software engineering means that you need to have a deep understanding of software as a whole, right? You need to understand the programming language that you use. You might even have to learn a certain framework or a certain library, right? You have to have a key understanding in terms of how things work. As I mentioned, you have to have design system skills. So you need to be able to actually plan out how your actual software is going to happen, because later on you'll probably have to scale up or scale down or change versions or take out a certain technology, things like microservices, right? And then we have a debug first mindset. Remember, I then said, you need to be able to be a problem solver. So if you're running into an error or you're running into a bug, you need to be able to actually know ways to actually counter and actually solve that problem. Long-term thinking, you can't just build a solution and thinking that today it's solving today's problem. We always have new challenges, new problems, new features that we need to add. So this is exactly why you would actually need long-term thinking. And then scales for users, right? So the more people use your product, obviously the more you need to actually cater for these people. An application that supports 10 people definitely cannot use the same technology compared to a software that is used by 10,000 people, right? We need to now start using other mechanisms to support our software so that it doesn't crash. Things like bottlenecks, our database needs to expand, our load balances need to be in check, right? So now let's look at vibe coding. Vibe coding is very good for if you are a beginner, right? If it's your first time trying to learn how to code or play around with coding. So it's very surface level other than software engineering, right? So it assembles snippets. So what it actually does is it just literally takes a block of generated code, because essentially it does use AI, right? So it will just take snippets from different past data, and it'll just put everything together with certain modifications, right? Right now AI is in a point of trial and error, so guys, do not 100% trust AI, right? We are still in the trial and error phase. So sometimes AI is king and sometimes it's really not, so you need to be very careful about that. Another thing is short-term wins. Short-term wins meaning that this is quite good for if you want to build a prototype, if you want to do an MVP, if maybe you want to showcase your skills to certain clients in terms of, hey, this is exactly what I can do, and you can quickly type it out or code it out, and AI will actually just quickly sum it up for you. Now the interesting thing is that you need to now have real software engineering skills in terms of now building additional features such as external databases, working with the cloud, infrastructure, and all of those things. So it's quite good for just short-term goals. And then obviously it breaks under pressure. So one thing about AI is that if you continuous using it, sometimes AI does fall into a trap called hallucinations, where it sometimes just doesn't do exactly what you ask, even though you repeatedly ask it to do a certain thing, right? It will still keep failing and will still keep failing. So yet again, AI, yet again, it's really still in its infant stages. Right. So now let's look at the pros and cons of both, right? It's not to say that software engineering is the best or vibe coding is the best. Let's just dive straight into it. Software engineering pros, right? So the reason why I highly suggest that you actually go into software engineering is that first and foremost, you have career longevity, right? If you start learning how to code today, trust and believe you will still be able or be relevant in the next 10 to 20 years. AI clearly is showing us that it is not going anywhere. AI is not the future anymore. AI is present. high impact roles, right? So you'll be working with really impactful work, right? You'll be able to work in medicine, in education, in law, in farming, in construction. Guys, this every single industry right now currently needs a software engineers, and obviously as a software engineer you need to have backup AI skills, and then also you have leadership potential meaning if you are jumping into the AI space now, you are already 99% ahead of the people that are going to only start to learn AI in the next 3 to 4 years, right? By then we'll be much more advanced than the people that are only going to be starting now. The downsides of software engineering is that the learning curve is quite steep. So what I mean is, when you start learning how to code, it is going to feel a bit difficult, right? Because you need to learn the syntax. You're going to have to learn, how certain programming language work. You have to learn in terms of how to code it out. You have to learn things like programming OOP, which is object oriented programming. You will probably have to learn things like your functions. You need to learn things how to working with classes. You need to learn how to work with objects. So that's quite overwhelming when you're starting out. Number two is that it's slower, easy progress, right? So at if you learn it traditionally, it is going to take time. So don't rush, trying to finish a Python course in a week or finish a JavaScript course in a week. It is going to take time because this is new information coming into you. So you need to keep learning and keep practicing. And unfortunately, it has a very high dropout rate, right? So a lot of people are interested or want to start how to become a software engineer, and then a couple of months or even not even years, a couple of months down the line, people all of a sudden throw in the towel and they give up. So you need to also have willpower to actually be like, this is a career move, it's a career change. It's not just for a job, right? It's a career, because jobs do change, but the career stays forever. Now let's look at vibe coding. Right. So the positive things about vibe coding is that you can actually have fast results, right? You can actually spin up something today. It can take whatever it used to take us a week, we can now do it in a day or two, right? Number two, it's that it's fun and very motivating, right? I feel like vibe coding or AI has made learning much more fun and much more motivating. It's so encouraging to actually see that you can just type a couple of prompts and already you can have something spinning and working, and then you can just gradually add and work on it. Number three is that it's great for beginners, right? So especially if you are going into web development, going into AI, this is definitely for you. Vibe coding is definitely a tick for you, because you'll be able to actually see the beginning, the in the middle, and the finished product, right? So you as a beginner, what you'll just do is try to explain to the AI model or the vibing tool is that, here's a good example. Let's say you want to create a personal portfolio about yourself, right? You will obviously describe what you like, the things you want to showcase onto your profile, whether you're a makeup artist, you have a business, or simply you want to, or if you're a model, you want to just talk about yourself, the work that you've done. And then what it will do is it will probably build a website about your portfolio. And then what you can then do is you can now start learning the basics in terms of, oh, okay, how did this AI actually incorporate my picture over there, or put this heading over there, or put this paragraph over here, or actually learn about bullet points. So I think this is the perfect time for beginners. Now, the downside of vibe coding is that it's got very fragile code. As I said, this is something for MVP, right? So trust and believe, you cannot, you don't use vibe coding they don't use it in banks or insurance, so like bigger corporations. It's very hard to debug. As I said, AI is very faulty. It's a very trial and error. It's still in its trial and error phase. So sometimes even when you try to describe what the problem is, it still doesn't budge. And obviously you can actually hit a career ceiling, because right now a lot of vibe coding jobs is that it's not really expanding, other than your typical, like your prompt engineer, or you have your prompt designer. But the job right now, the career span in terms of vibe coding, you can actually just hit a particular ceiling, right? So when exactly is vibe coding king, right? When is the perfect time for you to actually do vibe coding? So vibe coding lowers the barrier of entry, and that's a good thing because if the goal is to set an idea, not to scale it, vibe coding is perfect. And here's some examples, right? So if you're learning a skill or still exploring, right? You want to explore different technologies such as Cursor versus Windsurf, or Lovable versus Bolt, ChatGPT versus Gemini, right? That's actually ways of you guys can actually play around and actually explore these technologies. Another point is prototyping and MVPs, as I mentioned, right? So if you want to showcase it to different clients, or you want to showcase it in terms of a recruiter, this is a perfect time to actually show in terms of this is what I can build. But also, guys, take into consideration that you also need to be able to build it also on your own. AI is not here to replace your job. It's here to actually help you. It's here as an assistant. Don't use it as a crutch, but just use it as an assistant, right? You just need to hold each other's hands, right? It's a hand in hand kind of a relationship where you as a developer, and here's AI and all of these tools, and you guys can work together to actually achieve a goal. It's quite good for hackathons and for experimentations. So, for students or people that are quite interested in like competitions like hackathons, AI and vibe coding is definitely good for you because now, you don't have to spend 24 hours trying to build an MVP, where else you can just have a prototype, and then what you can do is work on additional features as the night or as the competition goes. It's also good for side projects. As I mentioned, I gave you an example. If you want to create a personal website or you want to promote your business, these kind of projects are quite good to showcase in terms as a side project. And this is and also it shows as a proof of concept mindset, right? So if you have landing a client, you can quickly give them an example to say, hey, you're looking for a certain product, how's about I can show you something in the next 2 days, and boom, you can quickly show them before dedicating 3 months or 6 months to the certain project. Now, let's look at why software engineering still matters today, right? Software engineering turns code into systems people can still trust, right? We still rely heavily on traditional software. As I mentioned, banks still rely on that. Insurance, security, governments, they still rely heavily on traditional software. When software must scale, last, and protect real users, function the fundamentals do matter, right? So the reason why is that it has to be reliable and scalable, right? So as I mentioned, the more users that actually use your platform, the the larger that you need to actually build your infrastructure to support that scalability and performance, right? So we need to make sure that our systems are working correctly, they're working efficiently. We don't want to be having faulty or buggy systems or websites, because then obviously it's bringing vulnerability onto our systems. We need to have security and data protection, making sure that hackers cannot uh, hack our system. We need to make sure that our data is correct. We can't just have data, floating around in terms of mixing up names, mixing up dates, especially if you're working with very sensitive data, things like people's identification numbers, people's accounts, people's monies. That's very important. Maintainability and team collaboration, right? So once a system is built, we need to also put mechanisms in terms of how do we now keep this machine running, right? We don't want to work with any buggy code, or we don't be working with code that still has errors, or if you try to click certain buttons, they don't work. That's really not proficient or right software in that case. And team collaboration is quite key, right? You need to be able to work with other developers because you're working on a big system, right? So imagine you're working for a certain bank. You can't be the only developer creating new features, testing and debugging, deploying. You need to have other members to actually help you, because team collaboration, you also draw inspiration from other people's ideas. And most importantly, real world accountability. I think that is the most important thing, is that you have to take ownership in terms of the software that you're building, right? If it's a certain feature, if it's a certain website or a certain system, you need to take full pride and accountability in terms of how well is the system doing, or even if there is issues, you need to be able to say, okay, yes, maybe I made a mistake, or maybe it's not performing how it's supposed to do, and then you as a developer need to go there, roll up your sleeves, and do the dirty work. Right. So let's look at now the future of both of these entities. Now, the future of development isn't about choosing between AI, right? Vibe coding or software engineering. It's about combining them both. Yes, guys, as I mentioned, it's not man versus AI, it's man with AI, right? It's just combining them. So tools will evolve, but thinking, judgment, and responsibility will remain human. The only thing AI is here to do, guys, in my opinion, is it's not here to destroy, kill, or demotivate. Instead, it's going to actually help us to elevate, right? It's going to open up more doors, more industries, more job opportunities. We'll be able to solve solutions much quicker, because AI is it's very good at obviously detecting small things or remembering large number of data sets other than yourself, right? So one thing, let's look at it, is that future developments is that AI assisted development becomes the default, right? So in future, AI will, be our default setting in terms of, hey, I need information on XYZ, and AI will be able to help us with that. Developers shift from typing to thinking. So right now, I think in future we won't be necessarily typing code line by line by line like we usually do. Instead of rather explaining certain functionalities or even small changes in terms of our code base, and what AI would then do is just go and do the manual work for us. Vibe coding accelerates ideas, engineering hardens them, right? So the more we use these vibing tools, the better they get, and I think it will produce even better results, and fundamentals becomes more valuable and not less. Regardless, guys, we still need to keep the tradition of learning how to code and learning how to work with these technologies. Right, so let's look at some interesting jobs of the future. So first one, we have AI augmented software engineer, we have generative app developer, we have an AI workflow engineer, we have prompt and systems design, and AI product engineer. Let me just quickly dive deeper into each of one of these. So an AI augmented software engineer is someone that's going to be working with things like additional softwares, right? So things like VR sets, or those VR glasses and so forth. And this is quite good for AI gaming, for so you'll be interacting in gaming firsthand, or let's say for instance in construction, if we are trying to build a certain building, and obviously before things hit the ground, what construction workers can do is that they can actually integrate AI augmented to it and actually do physical inspections in it. Generative app developer. So generative AI is also quite a very booming and interesting field, where this is the process where now AI is able to generate new ideas on its own, right? You as the engineer are there just to make sure that it learns how to create, you as the developer is responsible for, number one, collecting the proper data, number two, and building these AI models that the AI model will be able to learn from past data, and then understand to say, this is how I'm able to generate new content, new things like images, videos, and so forth. An AI workflow engineer. So if you go into AI, you're going to come up with a term called workflows, right? So what a workflow is generally, this is the part where a lot of automation happens here, right? So things that are repetitive, or we have quite a long list of tasks to do, what we can just simply do is we have AI agents that can actually do the work for us, but we need to obviously orchestrate them and actually place them in right positions and right places for them to actually work. So that's why it's called a workflow. So this AI agent does this. Once it's done, then this AI agent does that. Then prompt and system designer. So remember, I spoke about prompt engineering. Every time you type into ChatGPT or Gemini, you're actually using words to communicate with the AI, right? So that is what we call prompting. So as time goes, you'll be able to prompt better, or design system prompts in terms of getting better results in terms of the outcome of what the AI is supposed to do. And then we have AI product engineers, right? So product owners or product engineers now, it's not about them starting a whole team of we're trying to figure out this feature. What AI product engineers will now do is they will have ideas that they can actually bounce back and forth with the AI, and then AI will just give them suggestions or solutions in terms of executing a certain product. Right. Now, guys, this is the final conclusion, and this is the part where I call the developers digest, where we take a step back and we think about everything we have learned about today. We've learned about what is software engineering. We've learned about what vibe coding is. We've looked at the pros and cons of each. We've even looked at the major differences between the two. But tools change, frameworks change, AI changes every day. But the difference between someone who codes and someone who engineers has never been clearer. Vibe coding can get you started, but understanding is that keeps you relevant. Don't chase vibes, build foundations. Because in the long run, the future belongs to developers who understand what they are building, not just how fast they build it. Wow, guys, that is a very powerful statement that I think we can all just take away. And guys, if you've reached this far into the video, please do me that favor, hit that like button, do subscribe, and as I said, don't just drop a comment. Ask an interesting question. What was your favorite part about this presentation? Do you think you want to go into software engineering? Do you think that you want to become a vibe coder? Other than that, guys, don't forget to always learn, to always explore, always innovate, always collab, and never stop to build. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in and lasting this long into the video. If you do have any questions or comments, leave a comment and let's continue the conversation. And make sure, please, you follow us on TikTok as well as Instagram. I go by the name of Koketso Capfresh, and this is Billionaire Developers. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one.